Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
So my guest today is Justin Winstead, and he is co-founder and CEO of HireCulture, and he is the author of Become an Improver. I met him at a real estate event this last fall and immediately just hit it off, and could tell he was a good guy. So without knowing much about Justin, I said, I want to get you on. So Justin, could you tell us more about you and who you are and how you got to be where you are today?
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here and to share with your audience. Yeah, you said tell you guys a little bit more about me. Co-founder and CEO of HireCulture. At HireCulture, just like the name sounds, we help people with hiring and we help people with their team culture. So on the hiring side, we can do consulting and training on your hiring processes, help you to find top talent. But we also do remote staffing, matching international VAs with US-based clients and companies. So that's on the hiring side. On the culture side, we come alongside teams and companies and help evaluate and measure culture, which is unique for some people because they go, I know culture is important, but I don't really know how to put my hands on it or how to grab a hold to it. And so we help put some handlebars on culture to not only know where you are, get good measurements and data on it, but then steer that going forward. And we do that through coaching and training. I'm also the founder of the Improver Group, and at the Improver Group, we walk alongside executive leaders and people who want to lead out of influence rather than manage out of authority, and we help them also to build their team cultures there. So that's the main two things we do.
You called that the Improver Group?
The Improver Group, yeah. And that's actually how we got into HireCulture. So I said I was co-founder of HireCulture. Improver Group, some of the companies and businesses we coach, we invest in. And so HireCulture started out as a client under a different name, Content Compounding. And I was coaching them. And then we decided to strip the company down, rebuild it. And then at that time, I also bought in to the company and invested in, became the COO and working alongside there. So yeah, those are the two hats I'm wearing on day to day is HireCulture and Improver. And really we're meshing those together every day.
I want to rewind a little more. Because you have a background in ministry. Can you talk to me about that? Was that right out of college? What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, if I can rewind it even further than that, that's where it really started for me is as a young boy, grew up in a small community in rural Northeast Louisiana. Financial literacy was really low in our home, and so were financial resources. My dad was a high school dropout, did manual labor. My mom worked in the public school system. I had siblings, and we just struggled and scraped to kind of get by. In fairness, compared to people in third world countries, we had running water and electricity and all that. So we were, doing okay. But compared to my peers, I could tell there were the haves and the have-nots. And I was on the have-nots side of the equation. I can remember looking through the floor of the trailer house we grew up in, and you could see the ground underneath. And when it would rain, we'd have to get buckets and bowls to catch the drops. And so that part of my background is very important to see the story that happened, because I started growing up and I noticed my dad doing manual labor and working in oil fields and cotton gins and things like that. And I thought, man, I don't really want to do that kind of work. I saw the physical toll that it was taking, the time away. So I'm aspiring to be, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to be that. But then I became a Christian in my teen years. And then you combine some of the messages in the church world with the financial dynamic that we were growing up under and our kind of community ideology. And I developed this philosophy in life that money is bad, rich people are evil. And if you are winning in business, you must have cheated your way to get there. And so that was my mindset. So that put me in a weird predicament. I don't want to do sweat labor like dad, but also I can't go be one of those evil rich people in boardrooms and wearing a suit. And so what do? Well, a natural path for me ended up being ministry. And so as a teenager, I said, you know what? I want to do Christian ministry with my life. It's not going to pay a lot, so I don't have to avoid being evil. That's not going to be a temptation, but it's going to be an honorable. It was seen as an esteemed position by a lot in our family. And so So I started out actually preaching as a teenager while I was still in high school.
Mm.
I've got started being paid when I was 16 as being one of our
Wow.
youth directors, and at 18, I was licensed and ordained into the Christian ministry. And that's what
Wow.
I thought my life is going to be about, is all ministry. It wasn't long after that I took my first uh, full-time position, even though I was still studying in seminary. It was full-time. The church gave me a parsonage at 19. I had a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, parsonage as a 19-year-old. What is that about? But yeah, went into the ministry. I did that for several years, youth ministry, family ministry, and then did church planning and pastor work as well. So unbeknownst to me, my first entrepreneurial endeavor was really planning a church in Northeast Louisiana.
Mm.
And then decided to move to Texas to finish out my seminary degree, and said, you know what, told our family, said, hey, we're going to go get this degree. I'll be back next year. We'll see you then. And, now what was that? Over 15 years ago
Wow.
that happened. God had other plans. I felt a calling into the business world, and now this is my ministry.
That's really cool. I want to talk a little bit. I wasn't going to go here, but I want to talk a little bit about the mindset shift that you had to have regarding money.
Yes.
I mean, as an improver, like that has
Mhm.
that. I just want to hear the story. Like, how did that come about? What changed?
Well, yeah, there was really 2 stages that caused the mindset shift. Of course, like all mindset habit shifts, it takes time. So if you're going to
Mhm.
reinvent yourself, that usually doesn't happen in an instant. Maybe it initiates in an instant, but it happens over time. But the 2 big catapulting events for me, one of them was significant. One of them was just a phrase someone gave me. The significant event was is as I was doing ministry, uh, I was ignorant about money, and I was not managing or
Mhm.
stewarding money at all. It was controlling my life, and I definitely had a scarcity mindset, but yet I was still generous. So that was a weird combination, to the point where my checking account as a 20-year-old could be in the negative, but yet I'm still wanting to go buy other people lunch.
Mm.
So it was a weird deal. Well, that ultimately led to I'm serving at a church, right? So here I am, serving at one church. I'm in the office at another church of the missions pastor, asking for money out of their benevolence fund because my utilities in the trailer house I was renting had been disconnected, right? So this was kind of like, this is the floor for me. This was like my never
Mhm.
again kind of deal. So I'm asking him for money, and he starts to uncover my situation. He says, well, do you have a job? And I said, well, yeah, I serve at another church, And he's like, wait, you serve at another church? Do they not pay you? And I said, well, yeah, they pay me. He's like, well, what did you do with your check? And I said, well, I had to use my check to pay off the payday loan people because they were harassing me and the interest was killing me, And he said, a payday loan? Why do you have a payday loan at your age? And I said, well, the credit card people were harassing me, so I took out a
Mhm.
payday loan to pay off the credit card people because I had maxed out my credit card. And at that time, they would just, call you incessantly and very high
Yeah.
pressure tactics. And as a 20-year-old, I took their lies of like, man, we're going to ruin your credit. You're not going to be able to buy a house. You're not going to be able to buy a car, yada, yada. So they scare me. So I went and took out a payday loan to pay off the maxed out credit card. Well, he said, why did you have a maxed out credit card? I said, well, I had gotten it in case of an emergency. Well, Justin, what was your emergency? I had broken up with my girlfriend and went and bought a flat screen TV with DVD, surround sound. Pearl Harbor was the DVD I chose to go and play on the surround sound. So I still remember,
Mm.
that. And that was my emergency. So all of that to say, I was a very immature person, and he picked up on this very quickly. And I say immature. My heart was huge. I love people. I would do anything
Yeah.
for anyone. I knew the Bible really well, and so I was able to teach the students. And I was making overall good moral choices. I was careful about who I associated with and the type of decisions that I was making. I never got into drugs or that kind of deal. I wasn't getting arrested. So on the one hand, I was doing pretty good and mature. On the other hand, especially in this area of money, I was really lacking. Well, here was kind of the power point of this story is this pastor, as I'm asking them for money, he looks at me and he says, Justin, he said, it is ministers like you. Actually, it's Christians like you who give the rest of us Christians a really bad
Mm.
name. And he said, I know you're not going to feel like this is what I'm doing, but I'm trying to speak truth in love. That's what the scripture says do. And my heart is to give you truth in a loving way. But he said, our church loves you too much to bail
Mm,
you out of this situation. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. He said, our benevolence fund is here for people who are victims of their circumstances, not the primary creators of them. And he said, as a minister, he said, you are called to live a life of generosity. He said, you're called to live a life of self-control and serving others. And you're living a life of selfishness. You are
mm,
reacting to the things around you. You are catering to your own whims at any moment. He said, that is not what you should be doing. So he pulled off a book from a shelf. It was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And he said, I recommend that you read this book, especially the parts about budgeting and getting out of debt. He said, I'm here to support you in this. If I can help you to change your mindset and habits around your money, I'll do that, but we're not giving you a check. And so I was
mm,
mad. I was indignant. Doesn't he know I'm the victim here? Doesn't he know that I've just been trying to love people and be generous? So I remember walking out of their church, and it was a nice church. And I remember walking by this vase on a little cabinet. I said, I bet that vase costs more than the amount of money I was asking them for. And it's filled with pride. And I go sit in my little pickup truck, and then I'm staring at this bald guy with a goatee, this Dave Ramsey character. I'm like, who is this guy? He doesn't know. And then I don't know what happened, but it hit. The realization that I had been a selfish, immature person, not being proactive, not trying to level up, not being intentional, not having a plan. It hit me that that's the way I was living in my money. And I
mm,
began to be ashamed and embarrassed. And in that pickup truck, I started crying and I said, I will never again be in this situation. From this
mm,
point forward, I'm never going to be a taker if I can help it. I want to be a giver. I want to live my life in a way that I can share with others who are in need versus being the one having to receive. And so that was the first decision point. Later on in my journey, someone introduced a phrase to me as I told them that story. And they said, Justin, yeah, what you're trying to say is where there is no margin, there is no ministry. And
mm,
that statement just, man, it just blew my mind. And from that point forward, I decided I wanted my life to be one where I had margins so that I could share time, share energy, share emotional encouragement, share money, share my resources that maybe were office space or
mm.
real estate, whatever it is. I wanted to create margin so that I could give and share. Eventually, that pulled me into the business world. And that's what I love about helping leaders grow in all areas, but especially in business, because if you can be more efficient and effective and increase margins, everything
Mhm,
changes.
mhm.
Your life is better. You can make a positive income, positive impact. All of it begins to come together. And that's my life now is let's work better. Let's improve so that
Mhm.
you can be better and the world can be a better place.
So I'm curious, do you think the idea of become an improver was birthed that day in your truck?
The part of the mindset, the word wasn't in my mind
Sure,
yet,
sure, sure, sure.
but part of the mindset of an improver is taking responsibility and being intentional. And up to that point in my life, most things had happened to me, not through
Mhm.
me.
You
Most
were the
of my
victim.
life was reactive.
Mhm.
The good and the bad were things that were not of my own doing. I was just being bounced around. And in that moment, that was one of my first look in the mirror and
Mm,
realize that I was the problem, but I was also the solution.
mm,
And so, yes, I do think the seeds of intentional improvement and knowing I can do better. I can be better. I'm not stuck this way. I do think those seeds were planted then, even though the idea and the word of improver didn't come
yeah,
until
yeah, yeah, yeah.
much later.
So talk to me about the birth of becoming an improver. When did that come about?
Yeah, so 2019, I believe it was, I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I love personality assessments, and so all the DISC and the six
Okay.
types of working genius and all this.
Have you read Surrounded by Idiots?
No, I haven't read
That's a,
that one.
that's a good one. Our family, all my kids, my teenage kids, we all did it. It was so healthy for us because we could identify our strengths and weaknesses in.
Well, so that's a book or it's an assessment or both?
It's in a book.
Okay, all right. Now I'm not familiar with that one, but
I'll
I've been
text
kind
it
of
to
a
you later.
junkie on the other one. Yeah, that'd be great. But
It's a good one.
yeah. So at this particular part in my, personality assessment exploration, I had come across the Enneagram and had kind of dissected that a little bit. And in some of our friends groups, we were discussing these Enneagram numbers and types. And I discovered that I was a one on the Enneagram, and a one is what is typically referred to as the perfectionist.
Mm.
It's also called the reformer. And when I heard the perfectionist, and I started looking at my other friends, and one was a peacemaker, and one was a challenger, and one was an enthusiast, and I thought, man, your names are all cool. The perfectionist sounds so weird. So anyway, I reluctantly kind of engaged with Enneagram, but I didn't like the word that was attached. Well, fast forward to 2019, I'm sitting in a room with Ian Crone, who is one of the Enneagram experts and wrote The Road Back to You. And Ian Crone says, guys, we've gotten ones wrong when we call him the perfectionist. He's like, it's the only one with a real negative kind of slant to it. He said, what we really feel like ones truly are is they are improvers. And I
Mm.
was like, whoa, now I'm keyed into this whole Enneagram thing. Tell me more. And he begins to unpack, and he really says a perfectionist says things have to be perfect, 100%, whereas an improver wants to see things maximize their potential. Now, of
Mm.
course, in some things, 100% is the potential, but in other things, your kid comes into you, and if they scored
Yeah.
a 90, maybe that was the very best they could achieve given the circumstances. So an improver says, hey, good job, you reached your potential.
Hmm.
Whereas a perfectionist looks at it and goes, you didn't get the other 10%,
Yeah.
And so I love that word. And I realized that that is what I was meant to be and do, was to be an improver. And furthermore, the idea of a perfectionist is looking around, going, what's imperfect around me?
Mm.
Whereas the idea of an improver is looking inward and saying, where do I need to grow? And how does me improving make the things around me improve? And
Mm.
I love that idea. And so that's where the word improver was birthed in me. From that point forward, I began, because I was doing some business coaching at the time, and I began to use the word improver coach, is how I describe myself. And then the improver network and the improver investments, and a lot of that were birthed out of that over the years. And so now Improver Group is our main brand and umbrella of those little sub endeavors.
Hey, why do you think so many capable people settle for average?
Why do so many capable people settle for average? Well, I think there's two reasons. One is the subtitle of the book is Become an Improver, a challenge
Mhm.
to escape average and unleash greatness. Well, some people are settling for average because they've got things holding them back, and they are either unable or unwilling or unknowledgeable about how
Mm.
to take off those chains. Most of the time, those are figurative in the sense of their limiting beliefs. And so a lot of people settle because of these limiting beliefs that hold them
Mm.
back. Other people are settling for average because average in their context is very comfortable. And so that's
Yeah.
what I observe a lot in my walks of life is average doesn't feel bad. Where I came from, average was a struggle. You were sweating, you were struggling to get by. It was just, it was a tough climb. But where I'm at now, average is actually people are okay. So I think those are the two reasons people
Hmm.
set an average. I do think, yes, to some extent, we don't see people ever reach their fullest potential. And I think
Sure.
we're uncertain of what can people really accomplish. On the other hand, I do think one improver that I would say is a shining example right now of doing way better than most, of course, not just financially, but in the mindset, is Elon Musk.
Mm.
I mean, you look at
Yes.
Elon Musk, he could easily say, I could be as complacent as I want to be, and I could sit in all of this and never have another major worry, in life. But yet he's choosing to continue to push the envelope and see what's possible and see
Hmm.
what's next and where can he take, humanity. And he's doing it in a lot of ways without a lot of glitz and glam. Like he
Yeah.
talks about it, but he's not shouting it from the rooftops, and he's not making it. It's just like, hey, here's here's what we're doing. And I would say he's a pretty neat example of someone who is trying to rise above what anyone thinks is possible.
Yeah. And to your point, like 20 years ago, he could have done that. Like,
Yeah.
he could have been on autopilot for 20 years, but he's made so many more improvements to our culture and our world because of his drive. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives, to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.